2,000 years ago, Marcus Aurelius wrote these words: "To do harm is to do yourself harm. To do an injustice is to do yourself an injustice." I wanted to see if people agreed with those words today.
Absolutely, which is actually a very loaded thing because it implies a sense of mutual responsibility to the other, and that's complicated.
Yeah, I think to do harm is to do yourself harm. Certainly if you introduce harm into the world, I think that probably takes a toll on you psychologically.
I feel like in a city like New Orleans, where it's inherently like a communal city, like the well-being of your neighbor is very much your well-being, that particular quote I think is quite resonant for this town.
Let's say I robbed my coworker and they didn't know about it, and I benefited from it financially. Do you think that would still harm me?
I think while you maybe experience the benefit of temporary enrichment. Yeah, I mean, it probably would take a toll on assuming you have a conscience, which some people don't.
That's I call karma, in a way.
Stole from my mom and dad, stole from my own sister, and then one day a piano fell on my head. What?
So the karma always come back to you for sure.
Consequences.
Even if it's a little thing, it will come back.
So I'm curious, we're kind of talking about harming humans. What do you think about harming animals? Like if my neighbor has a dog who barks, it would benefit me to kill that dog. Would that be bad?
Yeah.
I grew up in a farm in Brazil, and the respect that we have for animals is something that I don't think Americans have.
Even in the context of slaughter, right?
Certainly.
Try to give them a respectful and
certainly.
Peaceful end.
Why would that be bad?
You're introducing pain into the world that doesn't need to be introduced into the world. That dog is going to suffer, probably. I mean, I guess you could put it out of its misery.
Say it's a happy dog.
Or I guess you could kill it quickly.
Would that be okay then?
Probably not. Not probably. That would not be okay.
Because we recognize that the dog probably has an internal will to live, maybe. Would that be fair, or do you have a different reason?
Yeah, he's experiencing pleasure, right? He's wagging his little tail. You give him a treat. He's enjoying the ride on Earth as much as all of us.
Happy guy. Oh, just a happy guy.
You mentioned slaughter. What about slaughtering animals at a fraction of their lifespan? Do you think that can be done respectfully, or is it bad because they aren't suffering and they don't need to die?
I think it can be done humanely. I don't know about respectfully, because inherently it's a rife thing. But I think doing things humanely in that context is the best that we can hope for. I'm a vegetarian. My mother raised me a vegetarian.
What do you think about kind of the ways that we treat pigs and chickens and cows in society, the meat and dairy industry? Do you think that is probably bad, or what do you think about that?
I've never been, it's a disclaimer, I've never been to a slaughterhouse. What I read is that it's not really, it's there to, it's not really there to optimize the experience for the product that's getting slaughtered. It's there for efficiency.
You mentioned the word humane. I kind of want to dig into that a little bit more. What does humane mean, if we looked it up in the dictionary?
Empathy is a big part of it. Reducing suffering. I think reducing suffering that's what comes to mind for me when I think of the word humane. Reducing suffering.
When you were talking about mammals, that sounded like a very kind of vegan type argument.
They're right. I mean, I'm persuaded by their arguments, but I think I'm just selfish, and I'm I like the way meat tastes. Yeah. Although I really like the way imitation meat tastes too. Yeah. So if they were to wean me off of it, it's like something you indulge in where you're or alcohol or cigarettes, or you're I know this is not good. Although it's different because it's that's more really it's only harming me. If there was something happening in the world where no more meat, I'd be that's probably good.
In the dictionary, it's compassionate or benevolent. So I think the idea of humane slaughter, I think, is an interesting one, because I've been to slaughterhouses, and you go to the grocery store and you see the labels say humane everywhere. I can promise there was nothing humane happening in that slaughterhouse. So let me summarize. You think that vegans are right, but you're too selfish to go vegan.
Yeah.
Okay, so
maybe eventually. Maybe I'll put it like this. I aspire to one day have the discipline to be a vegan myself.
We have the luxury of choice, but if you're, somebody that's lower working class or blue collar, you get what you can get.
Please, sir, I want some more.
What?
So I think the problem, it's good that we're like thinking about it, but there is kind of a class component there, because if you're somebody on food stamps, like you don't have the luxury to have that agency. But I'm glad that like folks that have a little bit more space and economic agency are thinking about it, because certainly, yeah, there's a sense of responsibility for sure.
If you were to try to get me to a vegan place, like cheese thing is a hard, I want to eat cheese. And I'm also not sold on like I don't know. I feel like a slaughterhouse it's obvious to me why it's inhumane, but cheese is not obvious to me why it's inhumane. Maybe I'm ignorant about that.
I used to think that like vegetarians or vegans were mostly like rich or white or whatever. When you actually look at the numbers, plant-based diets come in around 30% cheaper, and like generally lower income countries are just naturally more plant-based because meat and dairy are expensive. So I don't necessarily think, maybe it's more of like you do have to have more time to think about these things, but I also think that the consumers have responsibility. At the same time, animal agriculture industry has put out so much propaganda that I think it's really important to challenge that idea. Like I mentioned earlier with the things on the labels and how they're not true. So, not everyone is exposed to these ideas. So yeah, I kind of get what you're saying there. So the reason they produce milk is because they have a baby, but how do they get pregnant is, I think, very interesting.
Don't they, at least in the realm that we're talking about here, well, before humans, they just did it, cow style, whatever.
Cow style.
Now they're artificially inseminated by like a turkey baster, right? Looking thing.
Yeah, it's pretty gross. Like, do you think the cow is harmed during forcible impregnation?
I don't know. They could be, they could not. I'm unaware of that.
Yeah. So essentially they put them in this like machine, it's called a cattle crush, and the cows are like trying to get away, and then the farmers like put their hand up their butt, and then they put the turkey baster thing in their vagina, and they like hold the cervix and like inseminate it. But where does that semen come from? Like, they have to jerk off bowls. Like, isn't that fucking weird?
Someone's job.
Yeah.
When I grow up, I want to be the president. When I grow up, I want to be an astronaut. When I grow up, I want to touch bulls' dicks.
Life's not fair and nature is brutal. That's not a blanket statement to absolve ourselves or any kind of culpability of unnecessary or preventable suffering. I think a great way to get closer to that is sort of the farm to table movement and getting away from this mass like industrialization of stuff just across the board. I think the more local we can get in sourcing everything.
You can find us at local grocery stores, farmers markets, or come visit us here at Elwood Farms to experience the amazing flavor of fresh, local dog meat.
So cows, they get impregnated, they have their baby, the baby's taken away, humans take the milk, they sell the milk. That happens 3 to 5 times. Then they can't produce milk anymore because they get too old. What happens to them then?
I'm guessing they turn them into like meat cows.
Yeah. So it's kind of the same thing, right? As meat cow, cheese cow, they all end up in slaughterhouses.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I am hopeful, and I do think that people are trying to get more locally sourced.
Fresh, local dog meat.
Would you? What's your take on that, Natalie? Do you see a trend going in that direction?
So I actually take a lot of issues with the term local for a few reasons. So first of all, the meat industry, they used to kind of use humane. That was their kind of like go-to word. As people have kind of learned more about how you can't necessarily humanely slaughter an animal, they've shifted their advertisement to local. So they can put local on anything. So I was actually kind of looking at this butcher shop in New Orleans, and they're like, all our meat is local. Some of it came from Denver, some of it from Florida. But then the issue is that all farms are local to somewhere. Like, if I robbed my neighbor, I think that's just as bad as robbing someone from a different city. So to me, locality doesn't change morality.
Oh yeah, I think we would all agree on there's certain universal. I think we all my hope from a good faith standpoint, and is I think most people would be appalled to see, if they had to see it, an animal suffering unnecessarily, and I don't know what the solution is.
To exist in this world without any compromise on the things that you consume is, like you're saying, it is damn near impossible.
Right. And that's kind of what, we kind of started talking about. Marcus Aurelius. The Stoics are really big about like what you can control versus what you can't control. And I think it's good to focus on what we can control. And yeah, I'd love to give you like resources about kind of how to do this more, because I think you are close ethically. It's more just like the practical stuff. Would that be fair?
Disciplined.
Yeah, and I really want to challenge that because I don't think it does take discipline. What it takes, I think, is an emotional connection with what you're paying for. There's this idea in society that we can use animals for food, no problem, right? I think that needs to be challenged and amended to say, why are we using them for food when we don't need to? Because they have their own inherent moral worth. If you saw a burger, you would probably just think burger, right? Like
Yeah, I mean, I'm willfully ignorant. Like, I've never toured I've toured a coffee plant one time, and I was like, that's cool.
Didn't make you want to drink coffee.
I was great. I was like, yeah, like, this is fun. There's a reason why there's not really, like, a large demand for slaughterhouse tours.
Yeah, exactly. And, like, so when I see, like, a beef burger, I don't see a tasty burger. I see, like, a cow being slaughtered.
Pain and suffering that the cow endured so that people like me could just enjoy that.
And like I used to.
Yeah.
So I think it's an emotional component that maybe you don't have yet. Do you think taste, because taste is like a sense, right? Like sight or smell or sound.
Yep.
Can taste justify violence toward animals?
Of course not.
If you could live a life where you intentionally harmed humans, intentionally harmed animals, or neither, what would you choose?
Well, neither.
What do you guys think is more important, your convenience or animals' lives?
Good question. I'm sorry, I will be hypocrite if I say that I'm looking for the animals that I'm eating and don't know where they're come from. So for me, honesty is more my convenience.
Is more important?
No, not more important, but is my attitude today. Is what
your actions.
Is what I'm living today. I can be a better person in the future, and of course, in looking not just for myself, for my neighbors, for my community, from where I'm from, and from all the animals that is right there. So,
are there any brands or resources that you recommend for folks that are well-meaning and are trying to shift the needle?
Absolutely. I will give you some, we can cut it here and I'll give you some resources. I always carry them around. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. Special thanks to my morally superior patrons, Amy, Andy, Deepak, and Rebecca.